all right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Sunday Secrets to Goal Achievement Mastery podcast. I am your host. My name is Mike DeLuca, and I am very, very excited that you're here. We have a bunch of folks on Facebook Live. We have some folks here on Zoom. There'll be more folks coming in on Zoom. As always, I am required to let you know that this podcast, Secrets to Goal Achievement Mastery, is brought to you by me and my company, Integrative Wellness and Development, LLC. We are not associated with any organization, any other company, any other podcast, any other group, any other anything but me and my company. And the sole purpose of tonight's podcast and every podcast we do is really to share information, inspiration, perspiration, uh, to really to inspire you as I have been inspired by the people that I bring on. And I don't bring on any strangers. I bring on people that I've known for quite a while who have educated me and inspired me. And tonight, we're going to meet Wendy, and Wendy has inspired me for several decades. Um, so um, but it's important that I let you know that we are not here to diagnose, treat, or prevent any illnesses or challenges that you would need to seek care from a professional in your area. What we are, again, is about sharing information and inspiration. So, with that long-winded introduction, I am incredibly excited to introduce you to a good friend and someone, as I said, who has inspired me for decades, Wendy Gideon. And let me share my screen here for a minute. Um, yeah, so a little bit about Wendy. Wendy Gideon was born as an above-the-knee amputee with triple limb difference. She has overcome physical, financial, and relationship challenges by applying a positive mindset. Okay, a key to goal achievement mastery right there. A positive mindset and trying to move forward as her best self. Today, she is a 42-year-old mother of two, an adaptive athlete, a world traveler, a triathlete, an adventurer, and a college professor. She has recently completed a triathlon and a strenuous 20-mile hike in Alaska with her family in the summer of 2024 after a year of adventure travel across the US, Mexico, and Canada in their 4x4 camper van. That alone is an award-winning adventure, doing that with a family with two young children. Right now, she's preparing for the adventure of a lifetime, trekking the Annapurna circuit in the Himalayas. She is hoping to be the first female leg amputee to complete this grueling 100-plus mile, 260-kilometer trek on four-arm crutches, navigating elevations of over 17,000 feet and some of the most challenging terrain in the world. Her dream is to show others with limb differences, and really anyone facing their own uphill battles and challenges, that the human body and the human spirit are capable of amazing things. And certainly Wendy is an example of someone who has looked challenges in the face, overcome them, and has achieved amazing things. So with that, Wendy, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Thank you so much for being the incredible human being that you are. And welcome to our show.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. It is an honor to be here. And I'm happy to share whatever I can that might be useful to someone else.
Fantastic. And that's the big reason we have you on the show, is that, your story and what you've learned is going to be very, very valuable to everyone who is looking to achieve goals and overcome obstacles. So, I read your biography to everybody, but could you tell us personally about the challenges you had growing up and how they affected you and what inspired you to move forward when others would have really allowed those types of challenges to really stop them in their tracks?
Wow. Okay. Well, yeah, you did introduce a little bit about me. I know from the picture, it's hard to tell what's going on here, but um, when I was born, it was a surprise to my family that I was born with disabilities. So my parents were young and healthy, and there was no real reason for extensive prenatal care. So I was born with almost complete loss of my right leg. And then my left leg the foot was backwards in a condition called club foot. So that was surgically corrected shortly after my birth. I also have shortening of the left arm and the left leg, and all of the fingers in my left hand were conjoined. That's called syndactyly. So they were surgically separated. I do have three fingers on my left hand, only my thumb bends. Okay. Um, and so lots of surgeries as a kid. Um, and my parents, adjusting to what it would be like, to have a child with a disability. And I grew up pre-internet. So I never saw, other people with disabilities very often. We did have I knew two leg amputees growing up, but they were not athletic. And I honestly didn't know what was possible for me growing up because, for example, learning to ride a bike as a little kid, most kids are learning to ride a bike around age 5 to 10. I couldn't go onto YouTube, and see how do you ride a bike with one leg? Is there anybody else doing this? Never saw anything like that. They didn't start airing the Paralympics until I was in college. So I just didn't know. And, um, back then, the viewpoint of how disability was viewed was very different, I feel, compared to nowadays, where nowadays it feels more open, more accepting of people with limb differences and disabilities. But growing up, mostly we were just told, try to try to fit into normal everyday society. Where my family really encouraged me to wear my prosthetic leg. And the type of prosthetic leg I wore back then, it had a mechanical knee, but we would cover it with this foam covering that made it look like a real leg. Say if you were in pants or tights, it'd match the other leg. But the problem with that type of leg is that it really impairs the function of the prosthetic. And so I had a lot of mobility issues, not being able to walk really that far with the prosthetic leg. It was very heavy, it was uncomfortable. And actually, the first version of my prosthetic leg um, was I was fit basically as a hip amputee, which means as if I had no leg on the right side. And so the prosthetic wrapped around my entire waist. It was very uncomfortable. Um, and I hated wearing it. And I always put up a fight with my parents about putting on this silly device that I could barely walk very well in, was hot, was uncomfortable. I preferred to hop if I had a choice, so I would hop places. I had a little skateboard and I would scoot along on a skateboard. But it became clear as we got closer to elementary school and that Wendy couldn't just hop everywhere. I mean, I did have crutches. I used a little bit of some armpit crutches too. And so my parents learned of a procedure called limb lengthening. and it was a brand new procedure, and I was one of the first limb amputees to have that procedure done in 1992. And what it did was it actually allowed me to grow more femur on my right side. So I was born with just about a centimeter of femur. And the procedure involved breaking that femur bone into two pieces and then sticking a metal device through the two pieces with these long pins. And then I had this metal apparatus that stuck out from my hip. And the idea here is that because bone regenerates, you can slowly pull those two pieces of bone apart manually, and the bone will actually regrow between those two parts, just like if you set a bone, if you have a broken arm or something. Um, so we would just keep pulling the bone apart, you know. But here I was 10 years old, you know, you know, not only was I the kid, you know, the weird kid without a leg, but now I'm the weird kid with a huge metal device sticking out of my hip. And it looked gross. I mean, it kept getting infected, and these pins were, you know, stuck in my bone and sticking out, and they would ooze. It was really something and painful, super painful. And my parents realized, you know what, we can't actually have her in public school because I just couldn't, you know, tolerate it. We had to keep going back and forth to Children's Hospital. I had all these complications, my hip dislocated. I kept getting infections of the pin site. I had the pins dislodge at one point. They put me in a body cast when my hip dislocated for 6 months, like a half body cast. So the procedure took about 2 years. The goal, again, was to lengthen the femur so that I would have enough limb, or what I call stump, um, on my right side that I could attach to a more comfortable prosthetic leg. And that was the goal. So I went through all that procedure, and that was a big event in my life, a big challenge to overcome. Being at such a young age, going through a traumatic event like that, um, having to find pain management, you know, strategies as a young kid. But it also intrigued me about science because here my body was sort of regrowing part of itself. I thought that was fascinating because I was one of the few amputees ever to do this procedure. I was in the medical literature. They flew me out to some medical conferences, and that really interested me. I would later go on, and I'm now a biology professor. So I was pretty intrigued by the whole concept of science and research from that experience, that, you know, young age experience. But, you know, from there, once I recovered from that, I had a whole nother type of prosthetic leg I had to learn how to use. So this was a different type. Now that I had a longer limb on that side, I could attach to a prosthetic leg that didn't wrap around my waist, instead just attached to the limb. And it was much more comfortable and much more useful. But at the same time, it was still my primary mobility device, and it was still relatively limiting in terms of, you know, hiking or any types of sports. It was just really limited to just short distance walking. Um, and so, you know, growing up again, I mean, times were different then. I remember being in elementary school and during PE, where all the other kids were playing softball or, you know, doing some sort of sports or go on a run, the teachers would say to me, well, you know, we don't expect you to be able to run. So how about you just stay in for, you know, PE, you know, we'll have you do something else. And that was really common back then, is there was no inclusion for people with disabilities. It was, oh yeah, we don't expect you to be able to keep up with able-bodied people. So, you know, we'll have you, read. You can, here's this book, so they would have me read. And interestingly, I became very academic early on in my life. Um, 'Cause that was something I knew that I could do with or without how many fingers or limbs I had, So I did kind of run with that and excelled academically early on in my life, and then earned a doctorate later. So, that, I was always kind of focused in that direction, but I never really thought, because there were no role models, nobody, was talking to me about going on a run, as a kid, or how to ride a bike. I didn't think any of that was really possible for me. I thought I was trying to just fit into a world of people with two legs and 10 fingers. And there was just really not that, there wasn't the, now on social media, you can see all of these people with disabilities and various limb differences and what's possible. And that's something that I was unaware of at that young age. So do you want me to talk about how, like, I transformed there? Because there's somebody in particular who I wanted to talk about that was sort of a role model for me. And
Absolutely.
so what happened was I ended up, it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started realizing that there was this possibility to become an adaptive athlete. And I was actually living in Canada at the time, and I listened to some Canadian news channel, and they were talking about a woman named Sarah Doherty. And Sarah Doherty was a leg amputee, and she had just hiked the West Coast Trail. And living in British Columbia, I knew what that was. So that's a strenuous trail on Vancouver Island. That's about 50 miles. And so she had done that on forearm crutches. And not only had she done that, but she'd also summited Mount McKinley in Denali National Park as the first leg amputee to do so on crutches. And she also climbed Mount Kilimanjaro on crutches. And I just saw her on TV. Um, and the internet was just starting to take hold then. And so I looked her up, and not only had she done those amazing things, but she had designed the crutches with her husband, who was an engineer, and she started a company for forearm crutches called Side Sticks. And this was revolutionary because before that, if you get forearm crutches, you just get the kind that you get at the hospital. I mean, they're not. She realized that for amputees or people with disabilities who wanted to be active on crutches, they needed to be lightweight. They needed to be carbon fiber. They needed to be modular. They needed to have shock absorption. So she thought of all these things, and her husband was an engineer, and they designed these crutches. And this was the first time I'd ever heard of anything like this, and anybody being able to do long, extensive hikes like that. And so this was around like 2000, probably early 2009. And I really wanted these crutches, but they were expensive. And that's the interesting thing about having a disability that a lot of people aren't aware of, is that I call it the disability tax, which is, if you want to be able to do some of these things, you have to, as the disabled person, you have to purchase these out of your own money. I mean, insurance doesn't cover the adaptive, athletic equipment. If you want to get a prosthetic leg with a blade foot, that's not covered by insurance. So you're going to pay for that yourself. High performance adaptive crutches like this were not covered by my insurance. They were several $1,000s to purchase, and I didn't have that kind of money back then. And so I had to wait until eventually I was able to buy them a couple years later, actually, um, to get these crutches. And and now I look back at that because now I, have completed up to 20-mile hikes, on my forearm crutches. And I'm hoping to do this summer a hike that uh, similar to Sarah Doherty, breaks a world record for amputees. That no leg amputee, to my knowledge, from looking and trying to read blogs and stuff, and try to figure out who's actually completed the Annapurna circuit in Nepal. There's been one man who's done it on a prosthetic leg, but no female that I can find, a leg amputee, has completed it. And so I'm hoping to do that this summer. In the spirit of Sarah Doherty, she actually passed away last year, unexpectedly from a brain aneurysm. But she had an impact on me. And it's interesting because I never met her. We never talked. Um, I never saw her in person. All I did was saw her interview and researched her online and eventually purchased her side sticks crutches. And she, opened a door for me that of mobility that I did not know was possible for leg amputees. And I think about that because now I have a public Instagram. I recently opened it up, actually, while we were doing this family trip last year. Um, so we did a family trip across the US, Mexico, and Canada as a family of four. And we were doing such amazing things every day that seeing wonderful places, doing long hikes and, open water swimming and mountain biking, it occurred to me, I was sharing a lot of that privately on Facebook with just my personal friends and family. But it occurred to me, I should really be sharing this publicly so that people can see in that same way what is possible with a disability, that it's possible to do these amazing athletic activities, and here's how I do it. Um, and so I I think about that because I do have people that reach out to me through Instagram, and it's been really interesting to dialogue with people with various disabilities across the world and talk about, how I'm able to do certain things. And people are curious. They're curious about how I hike. And I've had to solve problems with that and be creative because my arms are different lengths. So, one of my crutches, I have to adjust for that. My left hand doesn't grip very well. So we bungee my hand to the crutch grip so that I can actually use it. And then I've solved problems like if I, hike for longer distances, I start getting a lot of blisters on my palms because I'm walking on my hands, and hands weren't really designed for long distance walking. So I've solved problems with that, with wearing thick gloves, and eventually just I tape my hands now with athletic tape if I'm going to do a long distance hike, and that does wonders for preventing blistering. So people question me about that, and I've had questions about that. People have wondered, how did you figure out how to ride a bike? So I told the story earlier, that seemed impossible to me as a kid. I couldn't get the hang of it. I couldn't figure out how do I get the other pedal to move on the other side? How do I make that work? And part of it was the technology hadn't been invented yet. Um, what I use now is actually it's not specific for people with disabilities. It's used by all sorts of cyclists. The technology is now a special type of bike pedal that you clip to your shoe, your bike shoe. So it has a locking mechanism so that you're clipped to your bike pedal. And that allows me to propel my bike without having to pedal the other side. And that technology didn't exist when I was a kid. So I had to learn, had to figure that out. Um, let's see what else. I feel like I'm going in too many different directions, Michael. Focus me.
let's
Focus me.
no, I mean, let's talk about, you gave us so much food there. I want to,
Yeah.
let's digest it a little bit. Because you brought up some really important points, and that is even from a very young age, inside of you, there was a you that was determined to live a life that you envisioned and not a life that was determined by the conditions of your physical body, right? So tell me a little bit about that Wendy, right? What was that Wendy like, and what inspired her to not accept just go back in the classroom and read a book and just spend the rest of your life looking through a window and watching the rest of the children play and the rest of life going on. What was that inside of you that determined that I was going to live the life of my dreams and not the limitations that people saw of me? Where was that spark? Where did it come from?
I have a technique and I learned it actually during limb lengthening when I was in a lot of pain and I kept having all these complications and had to have more surgeries. And we had this goal that I was going to lengthen my femur to 10 centimeters. That was the goal. And I kept having all these problems, and they said, should we just take the device out? Should we just call it? You've had so many, complications with this procedure and you're in a lot of pain. And interestingly, I said no. I said, I want to keep going. I want those 10 centimeters. I'm going to do it. And my technique was visualization.
Mhm.
So I would visualize the goal of what I wanted. I know this might even seem a little bit silly, but I would visualize it in every aspect of detail. What would it feel like to have those 10 centimeters of bone and to have that full, that length of limb that I was hoping for? What would it feel like? How would it be like to put that prosthetic leg on and be able to walk really comfortably anywhere I wanted to go, And I would just visualize that in every little piece of detail that I could. And then I would write it out too. I would write stories about it as a little kid, just what would this feel like? And I've done it. And from the perspective of I'm already there. I've
Yes.
already achieved this. And so I figured that out as a young kid, and it got me through limb lengthening, which was it's hard to really explain how bad that was, but it's like breaking your bone every day is what it was, to pull it apart. So, I got me through that and I could feel what it was going to be like to reach that goal. And I've used that same approach many times now in my life, that when something seemed impossible, and people were telling me it was impossible.
Yep.
The people that you look up to as your mentors, family members, teachers, saying, you are never going to be a runner, you're never going to be able to do those things. You have to hold that vision for yourself. And so for me, I just saw myself as being mobile. And it took a while. It took a long time because the technology also had to get to where, it needed to be. Um, but I had that vision from a very young age. I'm going to ride a bike. I don't know how, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to ride a bike. I'm going to learn how to rock climb. I'm going to have a family someday. I'm going to have healthy children. I'm going to find a partner who respects me and who is inclusive of my disability. I'm going to find my dream job. I use that same technique to become a college professor, a very competitive, difficult position to get in Southern California. And I used that same approach of visualization, putting myself there, journaling about it, and then just slowly moving towards that goal. Because sometimes it's not going to be tomorrow that you achieve the goal, you know? It can take many years before you can get there. When I moved to San Diego 11 years ago, I became involved with an organization called the Challenged Athletes Foundation. And this is an organization that really empowers people with disabilities. They provide workshops and activities to teach people adaptive athletics. They do fundraisers and provide money for people to purchase this adaptive equipment that I said, before, is very expensive to buy out of pocket. So when I moved to San Diego, I actually, yeah, there it is, the Challenge Athletes Foundation. I started going to their events and I said, I really want to learn to ride a bike. And they have an annual triathlon every year in the fall. And they said, you should really do the triathlon. And I said, I would love to do a triathlon, but there's two problems. I don't know how to run and I don't know how to bike. So the only thing I know how to do is swim. That's something I've been doing since I was a really little kid. And so I said, I'll do that. And they said, that's great. Just go see what it's like to be there. And that was a life-changing event for me to go to that triathlon now, now about 10 or 11 years ago. I think it was in 2014, so about 10 years ago. And I had never seen so many adaptive athletes in one place in person. um, People running with the blade leg, people, you know, there was a woman that looked very similar to me and just one leg, and she just hopped from the swim, onto her bike and she took off on the race. I competed in the swim portion and then I just observed all of the other athletes and what they were doing. And it really changed me. I I felt this spark, light in me where I thought, I want to be that type of athlete. I want to learn how to do these things. And one day I'm going to do this triathlon, the full thing. I'm going to figure out how to do it. And I didn't really know how because, again, actually, I had just gotten my dream job. So I moved to San Diego. I had my dream job that I started as a biology professor here, and that's when I finally had the medical insurance that was actually a good enough medical insurance. They covered the cost of the side sticks crutches. So that's when I finally got the side sticks crutches. But I had never used them. They had to be adjusted, because of my arm length. So basically, they had just come in the mail. So I had them, but I hadn't really used them. I didn't know, if I could run on these things. So that had to be figured out. And then the biking had to be figured out. And right around that same time, I met my husband, Brian, and he was also really transformative in that way because he had a lot of expertise in athletics, and he had this contagious optimism and inclusiveness about my disability that was amazing. And he was the one that came up with the idea of bunging my hand to the crutch grip, which was brilliant. I mean, that's exactly what I needed because I can't hold the grip. And so we started going on our first hikes together and, working through on our second date, he's tinkering with my forearm crutches and helping me with that. He's the one that taught me to ride a bike. The Challenged Athletes Foundation did hold a workshop and I went to it. I tried really hard. I kept falling constantly, but I kept trying, kept getting back on, kept trying to get the feel of it. And they said, man, you're trying really hard. You should apply for our grant for biking. And so I did. I applied for their grant and they gave me a few $1,000s to purchase my first bike. It's actually the bike I still use, and the one that I just completed the triathlon on in November 3rd. And that was, that's coming full circle there from 10 years ago. I went to that triathlon. I only knew how to swim. I didn't know how to bike or run, but I wanted to, figure that out. And yeah, there's the video from the event on November 3rd. So, it took me 10 years to get everything sorted out. But part of it was I also had two babies in between there and was working full time. And so eventually I knew I wanted to get into triathlon. And so that happened. And now I'm doing another triathlon in just a couple weeks in the area on December 8th. So yeah, that's from my public Instagram so that people can see again what's possible for people with disabilities to do, to be able to complete triathlons. And
Wow.
yeah, so
Wow.
I just had that vision of how I wanted to get there. And you just make these little mini goals for yourself, these little, first when I got the side stick crutches and I started hiking, it was, can we just go a mile, on crutches? Can I go 2 miles on crutches? And you just keep extending it. And it's exciting for me because as somebody who's limb different, I don't really know who to compare myself to. Like, what are my limits? Like, what am I capable of? And that's really interesting to me to explore that, because when you're able-bodied, you can kind of look, and even in triathlons, they put you in categories. They put you based on your age, you're in a category, and if you're female or male, you're in a category, but when you're limb different, you're in your own category. I mean, I'm an amputee, and there's other amputees for sure, that I can compare myself to and see how they do. But do they also have a limb different hand, that they're dealing with? Do they also have a foot that was backwards at birth that I now run on? So, who do I compare myself to? There's nobody in my category. So you're just putting, for me, I'm just looking at my own body and seeing what is possible, what can I do? And it's really exciting that now I have the skills to do it. That finally I have the skills for running, I have the skills for biking. In the last year, I've also been mountain biking, which is a whole different situation compared to just road biking, because now you got to climb mountains, right? You got to go up mountains, you got to navigate rocks, beautiful backcountry trails. But that was another thing to solve, situation to solve. And ultimately, what I found out is I needed an electric bike to do it in order to get up the hills on one leg, because I can't stand up pedal without pedal striking. So that's, a technique a lot of able-bodied people use, is to stand up pedal. I can't stand up pedal, so I have to rely totally on the bike. I also, because I clip my foot to the bike pedal, you're more likely to fall because I have to be able to unclip, and you do that by rotating your foot in a sharp rotation, which is hard for me because when they corrected my backwards foot, um, they had to fuse the ankle. So my ankle is fused. The foot is faced correctly now, sort of. It still kind of wants to go in, but like pigeon toe in, but um, it is fused, the ankle. So that's hard for me to make the little rotation that you have to do with your heel to get out of the clips. And if you're biking and you're encountering obstacles, you have to be able to get out fast. Otherwise, you're just gonna fall, you know? So I fall more than most people do because it is harder for me to get out of the clips. Um, but the e-bike helped with that immensely, especially on a difficult climb. If I'm going uphill, um, now I have a full suspension electric mountain bike, but that's the disability tax again of, I actually need an electric bike to do it. Although it exists because other cyclists do like the benefit of using an electric bike, um, I actually need it because I don't have the power of the other leg to get up these steep hills. But that has been an incredible mobility tool for me to become a mountain biker. I didn't know that that was possible. Um, on
I
this,
wanted to,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to just stop for a second because you talked about this undertaking that you are planning, which could be a record-breaking first for someone who is an amputee trekking the Annapurna circuit in the Himalayas. Wendy has set up a GoFundMe page uh, to help fund the adaptive equipment and the gear she's going to need to make this happen to achieve this dream. And this, I want to really clarify something. Um, People like Wendy don't just do these things for their own achievement, their own glory, their own bragging rights to get in a record book. If you've listened to her story, people have inspired her by going beyond their limitations. And now she is inspiring other people. I'm sure, Wendy, your students, as a professor, your children, their friends and neighbors, everybody who comes in contact with you is touched by this indomitable spirit. And you cannot help but look at your own challenges and say, well, you know, if Wendy can do this, if she can overcome this, I can overcome what I'm challenged with, whatever it is. And if she's that determined to go after her goals, I can be determined to go after my goals, whatever my goals are. They may not be, climbing the Himalayas with crutches. It may not be even, climbing any mountain. It might not be being in a triathlon, but it may be going beyond a limitation of your own health, going beyond a limitation of your own strength or knowledge, or maybe going after the relationship of your dreams. And we're gonna go back to that in a second, Wendy. But folks, if you're out there, if you would go to this GoFundMe page, and I'm encouraging you to do this, not just to help Wendy, but to help all the people that will be inspired by her. So this is her GoFundMe page here. And I'm also going to be putting it in the chat right now to everyone. So in the chat, you can find the link to her GoFundMe page, and join me in supporting Wendy. I am wholeheartedly supporting her efforts. Would like for you to support those efforts, and whether it's $1 or 50 cents or $10, or decide to not have Starbucks for 2 days, and put a contribution to this. This is not just for one person. This is to inspire the world. And Wendy, I want to just touch on a couple of things that you shared. They're so important. When I came up with this podcast, it started out as the COVID Crisis Comeback Challenge. I don't know if I even told you this, but this whole program was put together to help us deal with the challenge of COVID. The world shutting down, people lost jobs, people's businesses folded, people's health were impacted. And so, we came up with this COVID Crisis Comeback Challenge to bring people together to share inspiration, share their goals, share their challenges. And the three foundational concepts of this comeback was the use of number one, concentration and contemplation, which goes entirely along with your visualization, your ability to not limit yourself on what things look like now, but to adapt to the vision of what they could be and what you want them to be. Live in that vision to where that's what you see, that's what you eat, sleep, breathe, and that's what you become. And you bring that vision of the future into the present and manifest it by having already lived it. And like you said, you felt it, you smelled it, you tasted it, you had all of your senses engaged in that. This is so important for people who want to achieve any kind of goal, any kind of growth. That number one, right? That contemplation, that concentration. The second thing you brought up was a second principle of our COVID crisis comeback, and that was creativity. Okay. Adapting crutches, bungeeing hands to, the bicycle handles. And my favorite, the football on the hip to,
We haven't talked about
climb the rock climbing thing, right? I mean,
right.
that, I posted that on Facebook. That to me, that is so amazing and so symbolic of the ability to use our creativity to I call it unleashing your inner MacGyver. For those of you who've ever watched the TV show MacGyver, where MacGyver saw a problem, saw a challenge, and then just understood that with my creativity and anything and everything that was around me, I will come to some creative solution. I will make a bazooka out of PVC pipe, hairspray, and a box of nails, right? And that's
Mhm.
what he would do. And he would, conquer the bad guys with this thing he made from scraps that were in the closet of his house, right? So that second part, that creativity, right? Because we are unlimited. Our creativity is unlimited, right? And if we refuse to accept the limitations we are facing, and more importantly, the limited consciousness and viewpoints of people around us. Because, as you said, for the most part, when we have a challenge and we want to do something that someone has never done before or that's extremely difficult, we are going to be surrounded by people whose experience is limited. And they're going to say, you can't do that, right? What they're really saying is, I don't know how to do that. And if I were in your situation, I may not be able to do that. See,
Mhm.
so it takes an incredibly brave, courageous person to say, no, that's not true. I can do anything, right? But I need to concentrate, right? I need to set goals. I need to go and find that place inside of me. I need to be creative. And then the third part you talked about was collaboration. This is the third C of our COVID crisis comeback. Concentration, creativity, and collaboration, right? You found when you open up to the universe and say, I am going to do this, I have done this, and I'm going to manifest it, you will then attract to you the mentors, right? You will then attract to you the people, the organizations that are established to help you achieve those goals. You will attract them to you, and they will be attracting you to them, because that's the way the universe works. But you've got to work hard and you've got to overcome the pain and you've got to overcome the doubt, right? And you've got to overcome people around you saying you can't do that, right? And the kids laughing at you and falling down 400 times until you finally can get up on the bike. I didn't learn to ride a bike till I was 18, and I have two legs that work, right? Right?
Yeah, it was
I've
35.
yeah, I fell down a million times, but I gave up. And you inspired me. I gave up until I asked somebody, at 18 years old, I was embarrassed beyond belief. Could you teach me how to ride a bike? Because my balance is really kind of squirrely. He said, oh, he was an engineer, right? He said, oh, I have the perfect solution. Come over. So I came to his house. He put me on a bike. He lived at the top of a hill. He said,
Oh.
okay. Said, okay, you ready? I said, yeah. He said, okay, go. And he pushed me and I went flying down this hill, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the speed, right? The speed of the wheels turning kept me up, right? Just
Hmm.
automatically. And then he said, okay, now keep matching that speed by pedaling. And I pedaled and I stayed up, right? And it was, to me, that was magic, right? But what it really was about was somebody who knew. He understood physics. He understood, and I later became a pilot. And for pilots, airspeed is life, right? It's the speed of the aircraft that keeps it up in the air, right? So airspeed is life. So same thing with a bike, speed is life, right? And then you learn to balance, moving the wheel this way and that way.
Hmm.
But so I want to thank you. These three things you talked about, three things that we talked about in this program, three things that I talked about in my Your 9 Steps for Goal Achievement Mastery program that I created years ago, right? This is important to know. These are tools that we have at our disposal to use. And if we use them correctly, there we really can overcome so many challenges and we really can achieve these goals that other people thought and that we thought were impossible. Nothing's impossible, right? If you're determined enough. You talked about on your Facebook page having the mindset, having the positive mindset, right? Because that's where most people get defeated. Because they may physically have the ability, they may financially have the ability, they may have coaches and all kinds of things, but if their mindset isn't bulletproof, if they're not focused, right? If they are not determined enough to not accept anything but what they're shooting for and what their goals are, they will have great difficulty. So I didn't want us to get too far without thanking you for bringing those things up and also kind of summarizing them for the people watching. This is so, so, so important. Um,
That's
so
wonderful, wonderful alignment with what you
yeah.
were, yeah, you were teaching. Very cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is all aligned. And that's one of the reasons that I asked you to be here tonight, because live in alignment with all of this. You don't just talk about it, you don't just preach about it, you've lived it. Um, I'm going to open it up to questions for folks who are here in our Zoom room. Because you were courageous enough to come into the Zoom room, you get to ask your questions first. And then I'm also going to be going into the Facebook room because there are a bunch of people watching this on Facebook. And so we're going to, after the folks in Zoom have a chance to ask their questions. Folks, if you are joining us on Facebook right now, and we've got a bunch of people in there, holy moly, that's a lot of folks. Okay, so if you are in Facebook and you do have a question that you want to ask, then once we're through with the folks in Zoom, I will type your question in the comments on my Facebook page, and I will ask Wendy. But right now, let's go to folks in our Zoom room. If you want to ask Wendy or myself a question, you know that you can raise your golden hand, and the golden hand is in the React section of your Zoom. If you go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little heart next to React. And if you click on that little heart, you'll see a golden hand, raise hand. If you would like to ask a question, make a comment, or just tell Wendy how amazing she is, raise your hand and I will click on you and we will let you talk. And Carol, you are right out of the gate first. So unmute yourself and please go ahead, ask your questions and
Yeah, I
direct
don't really have any questions, but
or a comment.
yeah, I did want to say that definitely very inspiring, and for the limitations I have, which are not physical, like it's the same thing. Now I'm excited about trying one of your what you were talking about imagining the situation, and because it showed me that I was having a trouble going ahead with things without resetting. And here you had in your struggles like of it sounds to me like every day was a reset, and that was like, wow, that was, so it's good for me to see that getting a reset is important. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wendy, you want?
I mean, yeah, I can relate to that. So you have your goal setting, and sometimes you also have your big goal, and then you have your smaller goals, of how are you going to get to the big goal.
Right.
Like, I wanted, I saw Sarah Doherty and she completed, mini mile hikes, and I wasn't quite there yet, and so how do I do that? Well, I just set a smaller goal of, can I hike a mile? Can I hike 2 miles? Can I hike 3 miles? And when I set those goals and then I reach that goal, it also feels really good. It feels like,
Yeah.
hey, that was a small goal, but I reached it, and then I'm going to go a little bit farther next time and a little bit farther, the next time. Because sometimes those really big goals, like I'm looking at doing over 100 miles on crutches. Not all in one day, though. Okay, so just be real here. We're gonna take our time. Um, but the farthest I've gone is 20 miles in one stretch. So, um, doing that right out of the gate would have like I probably would have damaged something,
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something to training, and athletes, that's one of the things we learn, is that nobody wakes up one day and says, well, I'm going to do a triathlon today. It's part of that slowly training, doing a little bit every day, to prepare yourself for whatever your big goal is.
So
But
achievable goals.
do some achievable
Yeah.
goals,
Yeah.
yeah, that you can feel good about that you were able to do this, and then just keep stretching it, is how I approach it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that creates momentum.
Mm-hmm.
That creates momentum, and once you have momentum, it becomes easier and it becomes more believable that you can attain your bigger goals because you created a momentum and you have an experience, a history of moving forward. And the smaller the steps, psychologically, the smaller the steps, the bigger the momentum you're building because you have a much greater chance of succeeding quickly with small steps. But the
Mm-hmm.
formula to do a small step and a big step, it's the same formula, right? But greater momentum is created when you do regular daily small steps,
Mm-hmm.
right? And have that confidence. And then some other things we discovered through COVID, and I put in this Your 9 Steps program is in addition to setting the goal, in addition to taking little steps, right? Finding mentors and teachers, right? In addition to all of that, two energetic principles that are extremely powerful and useful. The first is gratitude. Okay. Each time you make a little step, you have a little success. If you create a heart full of gratitude about it, and you are grateful not only for what you achieved that day, but you can go like Wendy did into the future and see yourself living in the goal achieved state and being already grateful for having achieved it, even though it's in the future. That gratitude takes that visualization and gives birth to it in the physical. And it also really speeds up your momentum. And I know Wendy is very, very grateful for the help she's received and the success she's achieved. And that brings the next energetic secret, and that is service. That is sharing with others the gifts you've received and helping somebody else achieve the goals that you achieved, which is the whole reason I've been doing this show for 4 years. Okay. Every time every day I'm learning something. Every day I'm grateful for what I've learned. Every day my life has changed because of what I've learned. I'm grateful for it, but then on these shows, I have the ability to serve you by sharing with you what I've learned. More importantly, sharing with you these incredible people like Wendy that I've been blessed to have in my life, that I've been blessed to have inspire me, right? So that's gratitude and service, part of the formula for me of the 9 steps, right? So those things are all important, and they have incredible energetic tools and gifts inside of them. Marianne, you raised your golden hand. Come on down.
Just as a comment, I was just struck listening to you. You talk about momentum of keeping and going, and I saw the exact parallel of the speed of the bicycle or the airplane. It can fly with the speed and the momentum of keeping going in the goals. Same
Exactly.
principle. Yeah. And I said, wow, yeah, that's cool. And
That is
I'm
cool.
loving this show. Yes. Thank you.
Great. Well, we're loving that you're here. Thank you. Thank you. Wendy, Marianne is a good friend for many, many decades, many years. And she saw me at the lowest point in my life when I was homeless. And
Well, you didn't seem low to me. You were just a friend of mine. Okay, new place to stay. I got a place, whatever.
yeah,
It
yeah,
didn't. You didn't seem low to me. It was like, okay, you're on your way to somewhere.
yeah. Well, see, and your attitude helped. Your attitude and your spirit definitely helped me keep mine up. And after she allowed me to stay in her house for a week or two and take care of her cats and borrow her car, I went through that phase of getting close to the goal and then eventually achieving the goal. And I went from living on the street to working for a $16 billion company in less than a year, you know.
A little transition there.
Yeah, just a little bit of transition there. So that's a tribute to the fact that when we have collaboration, when we have people in our life, and if we don't have them, find them, right? People who believe in us, people who are willing to help us. That's a key to overcoming any challenge and achieving any goal. And that's part of those 3 C's, contemplation and concentration, creativity and collaboration. So for those watching, you know, um, use that, use these 3 things, use the inspiration that you're finding in Wendy's story, and they can work for you. So thanks, Marianne, and thanks for the support and the comment. And Randy, do you have anything you'd like to share?
Okay. Hi, Mike.
Hey,
Good to
Randy.
hear. Yeah, thank you. Wendy, this has been an extraordinary opportunity for me to be able to recognize the true nature of who I am to someone else's life. You have taken everything that you have needed in this life, just, despite whatever issues and hardships have been given to you. You have seized the opportunity through all of this. And I am just not only grateful, but I'm obviously inspired, and I'm uplifted. And all I can say is, for any of us that have been able to rise to the occasion and to become more of who we could never imagine ourselves to be, we have now been brought forth in the lives of many other people. So you're showing us who you have become, but who you always were and who you always are. And now we are being given an opportunity to take a look at what that means in our life. So I just wanted to say thank you for, and I'm sorry to come in late. I was involved in a few other things, and I said, "Oh no, I'm going to miss it." And so I appreciate being here, and I appreciate you sharing your life because your life becomes an aspect of mine where I can kind of recognize a little bit more of who I am and what it takes to get there. Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank you.
that. That means a lot to me. And that's sort of the spirit of what I've been trying to do by sharing my life more publicly. I mean, I've always been sort of a private person too. And to put myself, in a public venue like Instagram and, putting myself in podcasts and sharing, some of my hardships, and also showing what I look like, in swimming suits and everything, just here I am, doing my
Mhm.
things. Um, it wasn't easy at first, but I was inspired by, people, mentors that helped me, you know, um, and I figured, this is the time, to be able to give that back, and inspire people. And I really appreciate the dialogues that I'm having, the people that I'm meeting from around the world that are talking to me about their challenges and um, that I'm helping, just by showing myself. It's really just, it seems like a very small thing I can do is just to show, what I'm able to do. But I really appreciate that you find that inspiring. And my cat just opened my bedroom door, and now you can hear my children.
Hey, hey, and speaking of your children, so what's the effect on your children watching you go through all of this? Because it has to be something profound for them to watch mom do this and you know, watch the world that they're living in. It's not a world where this happens every day. So what's their, take on all of this?
It's interesting because I feel like because, they've been with me since they were babies. On one hand, they see me as just normal, I'm just mom, mom wears a robot leg, and we call it the robot leg, and we make jokes about it, with their friends and everything. But I'd say just recently, like probably in the last year or so, they've become, more aware of how unusual I am compared to other people. And I remember just recently my 6-year-old asking me and saying, "Mom, is there anybody in the world with one leg and 3 fingers on their hand? Are they able to do these things? Does anybody
Mhm.
exist?" I think he actually said in the universe. It was really cute. Anybody in the universe? Because now they're real like looking around, at the other parents and people that they see and realizing, huh, yeah, my mom is a little different, I guess, and they came to the triathlon and they were super excited about it. My daughter, oftentimes my 8-year-old daughter, she does some of my filming for Instagram,
Mhm.
so if we're gonna, we go do a run together. I've been practicing with. I actually do have a blade foot prosthetic. That I have some issues with it, but I am trying to get better at that. Even though I prefer running on forearm crutches, but we went on a run, and I'll have her video me, and she takes that very seriously because she says, "Wow, yeah, mom is very cool and very unusual, and the world wants to see this." They want to see what mom is able to do, And most people go on a run, it's like, well, big deal, but you see somebody with one leg running down this, street with a blade foot, that's actually, something you don't see ever, maybe. So, that's something to film and to put on Instagram and to share with people. So I think they're starting to realize, because they're involved now in the filming process of, we're documenting mom, and putting me in the spotlight. And that's actually new, because I've always, wanted to put the kids in the spotlight. We're doing things as a family, we film the kids, and now we're turning the camera around and we're filming me, we're putting me in the spotlight, me biking, me, doing triathlon, me, all these things, and putting this out there for the world and involving the whole family in, in that. The kids are really, I think they're being inspired by that. And my after the triathlon, the kids said, "I want to do a triathlon. Can we do it next time? I want to be able to do it."
Mhm.
Um, so they're being inspired by that too. And we're trying to make little funny videos too to put out on Instagram. So for example, for Halloween, I was amputee Barbie. So
Yes.
I don't know if you know this, but the iconic Barbie character, they recently made an amputee Barbie character. There's a doll now that has a prosthetic leg. She's a left leg amputee. I'm a right leg amputee, but she has a prosthetic leg. You could take it off. I didn't actually know this existed, but we found her a couple years ago, just at Target, and my daughter got her. And so the funny thing was, I decided to be amputee Barbie for Halloween, and my daughter did all the filming of it, me dressing up, and we made this funny little skit about it, about all of her accessories. Um, because I've got all the different types of prosthetic legs and all the crutches and all the adaptive equipment that I use. And so, we turned it into a commercial for amputee Barbie to celebrate Halloween. And after that, my daughter already had her Halloween costume picked out. But she said, I want to be mini Barbie. I'm going to be mini Barbie. And so she wanted to get the same shirt, with the Barbie logo on it. And so she ended up dressing up as my little mini Barbie. It was very sweet. So they're feeling involved in the whole process of, basically, I'm just trying to spread disability awareness
Mhm.
and, inclusive thinking, and realizing, that for me, it would have been game changing to me as a kid to be able to see somebody like myself, be able to go on, there was no social media back then. So I couldn't go and see this, but I didn't know that it was possible to be able to do all of these types of things. And I I'm just, putting myself out there to hopefully inspire people, and I'm getting a lot of messages from people that I talk to every day. So I think it might be working.
I most definitely think it's working. And again, your children are part of your team. I want to take this moment, though, to shout out and give recognition to your incredible husband. Um, it takes an exceptional person to see beyond limitation, to see the beauty. You have the three B's. You're beautiful, you're brilliant, and you're a badass, right? You've got you've got those three B's, and it takes an extraordinary person to see that and to embrace it, to celebrate it, and to become part of the team,
Mhm.
right? And come up with the bunging and the footballs and you know, so I want to please give my appreciation to him, not just for me personally, but for all of those people out there who have a partner, a spouse, a parent, a child, somebody who sees them as they really are and can be, or that even sees their dreams and is willing to look past the small things that we can very quickly make game changers, and unfortunately that happens. It happens when either we meet somebody or we're in a relationship and suddenly somebody experiences change or hardship or a devastating change in their health. It takes an extraordinary person to stick by or to embrace and say, I love who is inside of you. I love how you inspire me. I love your dreams. I love, how you, light up the world because of the light that's inside of you. And so, congratulations to both of you for finding each other. And uh, many thanks to your husband for being an example of what is possible when we stand by the people we love and support their dreams. We support the dreams of the world and people we may not ever see. Um, so it was really important for me to say that. So thanks for letting me do that.
I appreciate you saying that, and I know I'll pass on that to him because, I tell him that all the time. I say, you've actually, so my Instagram name is Amputee Adventurer. And I say, you've sort of, Brian, you're the one that sort of made me the amputee adventurer.
Yeah.
Because when I met you, sometimes I tell this story about, we go on our first date and, um, of course I have my old prosthetic on with the foam covering and the knee doesn't bend or move very well. And I just wanted to go on a beach walk, with him in the sand, and I couldn't walk more than just a few, 100 yards because the prosthetic leg just doesn't do well in the sand, and I was so embarrassed, just like I want to go on this walk, and it was my first date, how am I supposed to explain all this? And he was so nice about it. And I said, actually, I think the key is going to be in the future. I have these crutches. They had just come in the mail, the side stick crutches. And I said, in the future, I think this is going to be the key, and it was on our second date that he started tinkering with them. And here we are, more than 10 years later, thinking about doing over 100 miles, in the Himalayas when our first date, I was like, I can't even walk, like down the beach here and my prosthetic leg. I don't know how to do this. I don't have the mobility skills to do that. And that's the interesting contrast of where we are now is that now I do triathlons, we've traveled the world together. Um, and, we have these two beautiful children, and he's so accepting of me. And that was another part of my trying to manifest. That was me trying to manifest somebody who would see me in the most positive light because I have experienced the opposite of that previously in my first marriage. So I was looking for somebody who would see me and would support me and would be inclusive of me. Because my whole life I felt like people kept slamming doors in my face, from you can't go out on recess, you stay in the class, all the kids will go play, to later as an adult having the door slammed in my face and then wanting to find somebody who would celebrate me as somebody with a disability. And he was really the first person that I ever found that, that I was close to, who is so accepting of, of me and the way I look and helped me transform, like come out of serious like butterfly situation, coming out of the cocoon of, not being very mobile and not being as confident about the way I look, to showing myself to the world publicly and doing these extraordinary things. And it's because of him, his support, that we can do a world record breaking hike, that he has given me that support and that confidence and those skills and the patience. I mean, the patience he has with me with learning these things, the biking, how many times I fell hundreds of times learning to ride a bike, and feeling really defeated about it. And him just always having that optimism and saying, he just has that contagious optimism about him of we can do this, this can-do attitude. And I just have soaked it up and it's just transformed my life.
I remember you telling me the story of his dream about building from scratch the camper van that you folks used to travel all over the place, right? You went up to Alaska and Canada and all over the place. That was a dream he had, and he made it happen. He manifested it, built it from
Yeah, he did.
like
Yes, he's the MacGyver. He is the MacGyver
yeah.
for sure.
But that again is, the opportunity we have to inspire each other and play off of each other's dreams and creativity and challenges. I encourage folks watching and folks who may watch this days to come or months to come to, remember that what we go through, we don't go through just for ourselves, right? What we go through makes an impact on the universe itself. And everything we discover and every challenge we accept and every time we fall off the bike, which will be hundreds of times we fall, another principle in our Year 9 steps was don't worry about falling, fall forward, right? Fall forward. Because by falling forward, we understand that the fall is not it's not a part of failure. It's a part of learning, right? So if we can turn every fall into learning, then it's not a defeat. It's a success, right? Because we learned something. Number one. Number two, the old adage, it's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you get up that matters. We can learn to get up, celebrate the fact we got up, and find the learning inside of whatever it is we're handed, right? And we're going to be handed lots of challenges in this lifetime that will test us, right? If we can learn to have patience, like your husband and like you, have the patience, right? Set those small goals, do one thing at a time, a little bit each day, right? Be creative, have good mentors, collaborate with other people, help each other, right? Beautiful part of these organizations is that everybody supports each other and everybody learns from each other. And the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. There is a consciousness that's created when people get together for the purpose of growing, right? That's something I've experienced through this show and through the work I did with these programs I created is the consciousness formed by people coming together to want to grow, to improve, to be their very best self, to make an impact on their own life and the world. That creates this powerful consciousness that others can tap into. People that you'll never see, right? But they tap into it. I get from time to time people will whisper to me, because they don't want anybody to know they are watching this show for whatever reason. Hey, I saw your guest. I heard what they had to say. It really inspired me, or it changed me, right? Or this thing you talked about in last year's episode, right? See, we'll never know that, so because a lot of times people won't come up to you. You'll never see them, but you've touched them. And this interview is going to stay on. It'll stay on my Facebook, it'll be in my YouTube, and people will have access to the link to watch it, and they'll tell other people about it, and people you'll never know. So I wanted to take this moment to thank you, Wendy, for everything you've been through, for how you received it, for how you dealt with it, for getting up 100 times, and for inspiring us and for inspiring all the other people you're never going to see. And we appreciate you. We honor you. You are now part of our family, our family of Secrets to Goal Achievement Mastery, our family of the COVID crisis comeback. And this is a family based on respect, on love, on sharing, caring, and helping each other. And so we are here for you because you're here for us, and you're here for all those other people who need inspiration. And so I thank you in advance for the inspiration you're going to give to these other people. So last chance for anyone, if they have a question or comment, if you want to share that, if you're in the Zoom room, if you have any last comments or questions, if you are watching on Facebook and you want to type it into the comments section. If not, if you type it in the comments later on, I'll find your comments and your questions, and I will direct them to Wendy. But please, I put in the comment section of Facebook for those of you watching on Facebook, and I put it in the chat for those of you on Zoom. Please, if you're so moved, please help. Go to the GoFundMe page that Wendy has set up. Join me in supporting her. There are going to be a lot of other people supporting her, but let's make this group some of the first people to support her, whether it's $1, $10, whatever it is. Whatever you give, I will also match, in addition to my current donation. Matter of fact, I will not only match it to Wendy's GoFundMe page, but I will also match your donations to the Challenge Athletes Foundation for all the great work that they're doing. So please, your donation will go a long way. It will not only help Wendy set a record and inspire people around the world, but it will also help this Challenge Athlete Foundation help people like they helped Wendy and hundreds of other people. So that's my commercial, because I don't sell anything on this show. But what I do is I encourage you to take part in a very powerful opportunity to make very special things happen. So if you're so moved, and give up a couple of Starbucks coffees, give up a couple of fast food lunches, and invest. I don't look at this as a handout or even a contribution. I look at it as invest in yourself, invest in the world, invest in inspiring others by contributing to this. And again, it's in the chat. It's on the comment section of my Facebook page. You'll see it there. With that, Wendy, do you have any closing remarks, any closing things you want to share? Any questions before we close tonight? Wow, the time has just flown by.
Yeah, it really has. No, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to your audience, um, and all of the kindness that you've shown me, Michael. And I appreciate all of everybody in the Zoom room too, and everything you've had to say. Um, Yeah, I mean, this is a big goal that I have to do this trek next summer. I do have about 6 months of preparation, but I feel like, the wheels got started in motion, many, many years ago, with people that inspired me. And, again, people that I never even met, inspired me. And now the interesting thing is, I have the skills, I've got the support system, um, and I have the time to do it. And it just feels like now is the right time to go for it. Um, you never know how much time we have, right? I think about Sarah Doherty again, who passed away at 63 last year from a brain aneurysm, and how much she meant to me. Um, and I'm glad she didn't, wait to do her record-breaking, mountaineering and climbing that has inspired probably tens of thousands of people, if not more. Um, and the work that she did in designing the very first forearm crutches that were designed for high activity level people, and to make that possible. And so I'm just adding my voice and my experience to to the conversation about disability and what's possible. And I certainly hope that my story inspires you in your life, in whatever challenges you face, because yes, well, the challenges will always be there, won't they? Um, just little guests around, we always have them. They come in different forms, some are visible challenges, are physical challenges. Some of them, are health related or financial challenges or relationship challenges. I mean, they come in all forms. Um, and I think what's really important is what we've talked about today in the golden keys, that Michael discussed, and just some of the strategies, that I've just used in my life. I certainly don't feel like I'm an expert, in any way, shape, or form here. I'm just somebody that's lived an interesting life. I've had, I have a rare um, physical condition. I have an aggressive cat here. Who's trying to get on my lap. And I'm just really happy that I could share from my heart what I've been through, how I've been able to get through it, and hopefully you feel like today, if she can do it, I can do it. Whatever that challenge is. And I'm not saying you need to hike 100 miles if that's not your goal, but whatever it is, whatever your goal is, I really hope and support you and send you all of my blessings, and love from my heart to go for it, even if it's just one step at a time, one small little crutch at a time. Just go for it, and dive deep down inside of yourself. That's what I found is when you hit those rock bottom moments in your life, you either melt into a puddle, and maybe even just do that. Let yourself melt into a puddle for a little bit, but then come out of that puddle and dig deep into yourself and find that strength, because it's there. Find that strength, find that connection that you have with the universe or spirit, or however you think of that, just what is that connection you have? It's in there, and it's the human spirit. It's this amazing ability we all have to overcome challenges. So I'm certainly inspired by your stories, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you, all of you who've joined us here at Zoom, and all the folks on Facebook. Um, as I said before, Wendy, God, I saw you speak, and it has to have been like 20 years ago. Um, when I saw you on stage speaking, I said, yeah, she's got it. This was before you had done all of these things, but I saw what was shining inside of you, and I'm so grateful that we were able to reconnect and have you on the show. But you are now part of our family and part of our support, and we love you. You're in our hearts. We'll be cheering you on, both for your next triathlon and also for your dream adventure to the Himalayas. We will replay this, and I will continue to encourage people to support your activities. And so thank you. Thank all of you for joining us tonight. I love you all. I care about you. I care about your dreams, your goals, your life. And together, we can help each other, support each other, and continue to apply the tools that we have at our disposal to live the best life we can live and show up as our best self. Um, and tell our own tales, like the cat tail that's in the
Yeah.
in the camera, right? So thank you again. Love you all. Have a good night, a good week, and we will see you next time. Stay tuned for what will be our next show and our next great guest. And we will see you again soon. So take care.